好啦，咁嚟緊呢就係嚟到我哋咧壓軸嘅環節到啦，就係我哋壓軸嘅專題演講咧就會以英語進行嘅。Ladies and gentlemen, the following keynote speech will be conducted in English. Thank you very much. To conclude the Untitled Education Forum 2017, it is our great pleasure and honor to introduce Professor Ralph, the Serena H.C. Young, Professor in Early Childhood Development and Education, the University of Hong Kong。咁今日咧非常之榮幸邀請到香港大學教育學院楊雪姬基金教授、幼兒發展與教育科劉麗明教授為我哋今次呢一個嘅論壇作為壓軸嘉賓嘅。呢個時候呢，不如掌聲有請。Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here, and I want to congratulate Yang Yutong for its 40th anniversary. I'm afraid I'm going to speak in Yingyu. Sorry. And I have to say, I have to thank my colleagues for some of the translation. All the slides are not translated, but just some of them have been translated. So it's really my honor to be here. What I would like to do today is talk about some of the trends in early childhood education in high-performing jurisdictions and in OECD countries. I would like to focus on the policies and the practices. What are some of the changes that we are seeing? And finally, I would like to address some of the current challenges that we face. So, to an audience like you, I do not have to say why early childhood education is important. But historically, it is important for us to understand the roots of why our field has gained so much prominence today. Actually, compared to the 70s, the reason that early childhood education became so popular is because of increases of women in the workforce. So when the women went to work, someone had to look after them. So actually, a lot of the roots of the increase in early childhood education comes from increasing participation of women in the workforce. But today, we have heard so much about why early childhood is important. There have been reasons for that stem for the benefit of the child and reasons that stem from the benefit of societies. We have arguments from neuroscience, from economics, from human rights, and also we are very much concerned with social justice today. I think all of you will be familiar with these arguments, but I just quickly want to go through them. Ms. Wong, before me, has already talked about brain development. Mine goes up a little older, but just to say that it's not us early childhood educators that have made our field important. It's the brain scientists and the economists more than anything. Not because we're such good teachers, unfortunately, it's the other research. But we know that early experiences are built into our bodies. As a community, we rely on 3 studies that are so famous: the Perry Preschool Project, the ABC Project, and the Chicago Parent-Child Community Project to tell us that early childhood is important, okay? Or the brain studies to tell us that the brain development is so fast during the early years. 85% of our brain development occurs in the first 5 years of life. On the other hand, governments spend much more on higher education than they do on early education. This is on your right. It's a very telling slide. So governments are investing in R&D, research and development, but actually the brain development is very rapid in the early years. I think all of you are very familiar with the famous Heckman curve that talks about the returns to investment. If you look at returns to investment based on the 3 studies that I've talked about, we know we get higher returns when we invest early compared to when we invest later. In the past 20 or so years, we have become very concerned with social justice. That means every child should benefit. And we are very concerned about children from socially disadvantaged backgrounds. So we want to close what we call achievement gaps. Achievement gaps occur all over the world, and they show that children with more educated parents and children with higher family income tend to do better than other children. Actually, Hong Kong does really, really well in its school system in closing these achievement gaps. But we're very concerned about this social equity. So what we've seen in the past 10 or 15 years is in countries that are high performing and in OECD countries, a new or renewed emphasis on ECE because of the research from neuroscience, educational science, and educational evaluation. Also, countries have become very, very concerned about preparing our youngest learners for our changing world, okay? So a child born today will go into kindergarten in 5 years and go into start working 20 years from now. We don't know what that work will be like. Currently, in developed countries, we are knowledge workers. We are doing more creative work. More of the routine work like factory work, assembly work is being done by machines and more in less developed countries. So what we see is through the years from 1960 to 2009, we really need more analytic skills. We need more social skills. We have more service-based industries, and the routine work is being done by machines or automated or being done in third world countries. We know that technology has changed very rapidly. I hope some of you remember this. I was talking to my students, and they don't know what a telex is, a telegram is. I was talking to them about telegraphic speech, and I thought, wow, it's the new world. They know these things, right? So the speed of technological change is very, very fast, much, much faster in our students' lives than our lives. So we look at early childhood as the time to prepare children to learn, okay? We talk about higher order thinking. I'll talk about some of the skills. In OECD countries and in high-performing jurisdictions, there are also many, many issues, other issues that have led to changes in early childhood policy. One is the falling birth rates. In most countries in Europe, the birth rate is below 1.5. That is below replacement, right? So people are not having children. So they feel if they provide early childhood care free, then parents will have more children, okay? Because the cost of childcare has been prohibitive. Providing childcare is a form of encouraging women to have more children and stay in the workforce. We're also very concerned about graying population. Everyone is getting old, right? 1 in 3 people will be older, and then we're all living much longer. So we need more population to support the older people. Investment in youth and young children is looked at as in human capital formation. So we have few children, so we need high quality children, right? In the European Union, you're all familiar with the Syrian crisis, the refugees, very much concerned with bilingual education. In the United States, particularly the Spanish-speaking majority is going to overtake the English-speaking. The English-speaking will become a more minority. So they have all these issues with language, bilingual immersion, bilingual education, etc. And of course, the PISA findings. And I would like to spend a little time going through this slide because it's been very persuasive to countries. So basically, the PISA 2015 in science showed that children who had more than 2 years of early childhood education did much, much better than children that didn't. I need to just explain this slide. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So you see this blue line. If somebody had less than 1 year of early childhood education, they had 40 points less than somebody who had 3 years of early childhood education. So 3 years of early childhood education is the comparison, right? K1, K2, K3. And if someone had less than 1 year, there was a 40-point difference. If we controlled for SES, that is family income, and school SES, right? Where, if you think in Hong Kong, think of the district of the school, the difference was 15 points, which is still statistically significant. That is a big difference. That is a big, big difference. So this is if you've had between 1 and 2 years compared to 3 years, and this is if you've had more than 2 but less than 3 years. So you can see in the PISA, which is such a big, huge study, such excellent samples, we're seeing the effect of early childhood education on later outcomes. So governments are very persuaded by this. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about policy. Access means getting into preschool in Hong Kong. As you know, we have universal access, but access has increased all over. Structural quality, which is what is regulated by the government, the group sizes, teacher-child ratio, teacher qualifications, health and safety. Process quality is the curriculum and how it's delivered by the teacher. Outcome quality is how children are doing. So if we improve the quality of our program, we expect the children to be much better, right? Higher quality outcomes, and that area is neglected. And lastly, we have curriculum guidelines, and I'm going to talk about how all these things have changed in the last 10 years. I really want to just spend a minute talking about curriculum guidelines. No OECD country, no high-performing jurisdiction has a syllabus. None of them have a syllabus, okay? They don't, because they realize that early childhood education is a stage where early childhood education is holistic. We have different domains. Children develop at different rates. If they give a syllabus, teachers will follow it. None of the countries have a syllabus, but they all have guidelines, okay? So this is a very important trend. So all over the world, you can see that early enrollment rate in pre-primary education defined as 3 to 6, 4 to 6. You know, in different countries, primary education starts at different ages. Some countries 7, some countries 6, some countries 5. So we define pre-primary education differently, but you can see it's increasing all over the world. In high-income countries, the rate is about 80%. But what is the big, big trend is the fact that younger children are going. Okay, so the triangle is 2014, and the blue bar is 2005. And I'm just showing you for 3-year-olds. So these are all OECD countries. Can you see younger children are going? So in the past, government is only providing the 1 or 2 years before grade 1. So this is a trend all over, increased access for younger children. And I think we will see this all over the world. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you is, if you see at the bottom of this slide, these are all high-performing countries, OECD countries. Now, they start at different ages. In Ontario, Canada, at 6. This is 2012 data from the PISA. Finland is 7, etc. Now, you can see as they grow older, there's higher access. So we're seeing this trend everywhere. More likely that 5-year-olds will go than 4-year-olds, and it's more likely that 4-year-olds will go than 3-year-olds, okay? But we're seeing. Okay. The other trend that we're seeing all in these high-performing countries is a strong recognition on the importance of quality. So access is not an issue. Everybody is going. Access is an issue in terms of finance, but not they're all focusing on quality. And if you do an analysis, all these countries have recently issued renewed national curriculum frameworks. One of the best predictors of quality is having an intentional curriculum guidelines. So all these, even Hong Kong, we have our new guide to the kindergarten curriculum. So this is happening in all these high-performing countries. And also, there is a real focus on teacher quality. What is very interesting is in these high-performing jurisdictions, okay, and I'm currently involved in a study which is 6 high-performing jurisdictions: Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, Finland, Australia, and I'm missing one, England. They are considered high-performing not only because of PISA, but because of their policy. In all of these places, teacher professional development is a priority. In 27 of 37 countries, they require a bachelor's degree. But I do want to say something about our findings. Now, there are differences in the entry level in terms of pre-service, right? So in Finland, preschool teachers have to have master's degrees, same as primary and secondary schools, and it's okay for the teaching assistants to have bachelor's degree. That's what they say in their country, right? But in Singapore, it's only to diploma level. But Singapore is still considered what we call equivalent to our cert, right? But they have to get 5 O-levels, so they have control the academic quality too. So in Canada, the preschool teachers and the primary school teachers are trained exactly the same in the same program. So there's differences in pre-service, but all of the high performance countries are focusing on in-service and professional support. There's also focus on equity of access. That means everybody, regardless of your background, should have access to high quality. So they focus on historically disadvantaged groups. So in Australia, it's the Aborigine or the Maori population in New Zealand. They're getting more, they're focusing on their access. Or like in Hong Kong, we focus very much on low-income groups, economically disadvantaged groups. Governments in these high-performing countries vary in terms of their provisions. So sometimes they give free education to everyone, and the idea is a rising tide lifts all ships, so everybody gets the free. But in some countries, they only give the free to the low-income groups or the targeted groups. So think about China. In Shanghai, Beijing, the population is quite well educated, doing well. So the government is giving more resources to Western China, to Guizhou, to all the poor provinces, right? So that's called geographical targeting. So some countries are doing geographical targeting. Some are doing income targeting. Some are doing ethnic targeting. That sounds wrong, but anyway, in Romania, they have the Gypsy community, the Roma community. They're very disadvantaged. So based on their ethnicity, they're getting lots of extra support. Okay. One of the very interesting things is high-performing countries are seeing very different roles of parents. Parents as clients or parents as partners. And I have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to go very quickly. Okay. Important point is that high-performing jurisdictions are trying to have integrated systems, and this is very important. Integrated systems can be split by phase or by governance, and I will come back to this later. Basically, we find that all systems are having public and private funding. Asian systems are heavily market-based. That means families are paying. But the government is really, really important from our analysis in promoting equity, affordability, and quality. Private sector cannot promote this, okay? They cannot promote equity, they cannot promote quality the way government can. But at the same time, the private sector can be more creative, more innovative, and provide new practices can be scaled up. So what we find is there are a variety of curriculum models that exist in high-performing countries. There's no best model. There are many, many models. We make a different distinction between general models, which are holistic, okay, and context-specific, such as one that focuses on literacy or mathematics. What the trend I do want to spend a minute on this, because this slide shows how the curriculum guidelines areas have changed. Okay, so compared to this is comparing 2011 and 2015. So countries are still placing equal emphasis on literacy, numeracy, physical education, arts, and science, and music. But we see some new areas. We see religion becoming more important, foreign language becoming more important, practical skills becoming less important, interesting, social science become less important, and we see play. Okay, for the first time they put play, sorry, what's this? For the first time they had play, free unguided play in 2015, so that's really important, right? Okay, so what we're seeing is there are different approaches. We know we have developmentally appropriate, child-centered, mixed approach. But what has happened is we've moved towards more evidence-based curriculum and instructional approaches. These approaches, the DAP, tools of the mind, that's a self-regulation, have been shown to be effective. And what a recent review of the literature suggests is that developmentally appropriate practice is possibly best for younger children, but older preschoolers, that's K3, perhaps benefit from literacy and numeracy to prepare them for curriculum. Okay, I need to go through this very quickly, but there's also a focus on 21st century skills. Professor Zheng has talked about the 3 C's. I'm going to talk about the 4 C's from the partnership of 21st century skills, just to say that this has informed our curriculum. The teacher is no longer a transmitter of knowledge, they orchestrate learning. We need to encourage a culture of inquiry. So this is the problem. We're saying let's focus on collaboration, let's focus on creativity, let's focus on communication, let's focus on the other C, which is collaboration, communication, critical thinking. But nobody has taught us how to teach those, okay? How do we teach collaboration? How do we teach creativity? How do we teach? So as early childhood educators, what we do is we just provide opportunities, okay? And let them collaborate, let them work as a group. But actually, that doesn't work. To become good at something, we need to practice. So the teacher is required to help them practice those skills to make them better. Okay, there is an increased emphasis on play, and I have to say one thing. I know I'm running out of time, but free play is regarded as really important. Free play is letting the child choose, letting the child play with whatever colors, blocks, numbers. It's not teaching them, but letting them create, have the opportunity and space to devise activities, to problem solve. There's been a lot of dissension about free play. Some people say don't let children just play without guidance. They need guidance. So we talk more about guided play, purposeful play, edu play. Really, the teacher has a very important role, right? The teacher needs to scaffold. We're concerned with obesity, okay? And what has happened is more increased emphasis on fitness. Now, this is coming from OECD and high-performing countries, which are not like Hong Kong. They have lots of space, right? So what they've started doing in kindergarten is they started doing organized sports with children. This is not taking away from their free time. They're taking them to do swimming. They're taking them to do organized sports, okay? So this is in addition to physical activity, so running and jogging, and so this has really happened. Again, we see an increased focus on language, learning another language. We saw this with the OECD guidelines. We see a trend towards using many more forms of assessment, greater use of portfolios. This is the 21st century skills. We also have a number of challenges. We are trying to balance access and quality, okay? A lot of times quality and access are not totally compatible. We have to ensure sustainable finance. This is a big thing in OECD countries, because unless the government gives money, it's not going to continue. There are lots of issues with early childhood educators. There's low pay, not enough male teachers, and the teachers do not reflect the diversity of the children they serve. So for example, you may have lots of migrants from Africa in European countries, but the teachers are not of migrant community, right? So we see this in Hong Kong too, right? In all countries, early childhood educator salaries are comparatively low. And there is a tendency for governments to focus on reducing the teacher-child ratio rather than increasing teacher salary. There's issues dealing and engaging with parents, issues related to the curriculum, and we really have lots of gaps in terms of our data on monitoring and evaluation of quality. We want to know where kids are, outcomes of preschool. We really, in all the countries, some of the countries, all the countries have problems with this. Okay, so let me draw some conclusions. Excuse me. First of all, the good thing is that countries are investing early and prioritizing young children and their families. Thank you so much. There's no doubt about it. The other thing is countries are learning from each other. Both UNESCO and OECD are focusing on spreading noteworthy practices. So countries are really, this is an international trend, but you've got to consider your own social context, you know, what is possible. What we know is that effective is a very difficult word in education, because how do we define effective? Usually we talk about effective when we look at input and output, right? And is it efficient and effective? But in education, difficult to say what is effective. But we know that the effective systems can be in diverse political, social, historical, and economic contexts. We are having a trend to increase access, quality, and equity, and high-performing systems are all focusing on equitable access through efficient, effective, sustainable systems. What we find is a country as large and diverse as Australia or a small nation state like Singapore. Both have highly effective systems. They go to these systems in very different ways, very different political contexts, but it can be done in different systems. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Raul, for your insightful sharing on global trends in kindergarten education. Thank you so much, and please be seated. Thank you very much. 咁喺度咧，想借大家可唔可以再用大力啲嘅掌聲，多謝我哋咁多位演講嘉賓啊！